Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, January the 22nd. Like we like to do on Mondays, we're going to be chatting with our friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. Bill, welcome. It's always great to have you.
Thank you, Silvio. Glad to be here.
Well, Bill, I'm crying because Sports Illustrated is no more. I guess they're going out of business or something like that happened, and I'm going to miss all those great pictures, Bill.
Well, I had some difficulty understanding exactly what their status is. Apparently, they have lost their license. Now, I don't know what that means because you don't need a license to publish a magazine. I think it means that the company that owns them has withdrawn its approval for further publication. They're going to lose a lot of their staff members. Yes, I'm not a big sports fan actually, but they did put sports photography on the map. They made it into
Right.
a true journalistic form. The writing was good. It was always considered a well done magazine. But for whatever reason, I am assuming that the reason is that the growth of television and the fact that you can see the event on television at no charge usually has probably hurt them as has hurt other magazines in other areas.
Well, I think every high school kid in the world is going to miss Sports Illustrated
Yes.
because of the swimsuit edition,
Oh yeah. Well,
which,
yeah. Sure.
which was a huge bestseller. I was kind of surprised. I was a little confused too when I read the article, or at least the reasons that they're not going to publish anymore, because a lot of these media organizations are going online now. So maybe they can still run the pictures and put them online, which is
Yes.
where a lot of people see them anyway these days. But I'm just going to miss the idea that you would get this magazine at home, and they have been over the last couple of days. They have been sort of reposting on the internet a lot of their cover pages, and so many bring back so many memories because you
Sure.
remember them. You remember these. I think it was once a month or once a week. I don't remember how they published. Was it once a month?
I don't remember myself.
Yeah, I
I
think
was
once.
not I was not actually a subscriber, but
Yeah.
I always admired the photography um, because once we lost Life magazine, we
Yes.
assumed that we had lost the print photography. They were the leaders
Right.
in print photography, and deservedly so. Uh, and I still miss those magazines where you can just pick up the magazine and look at the picture.
Hmm.
And it was always told to me in journalism to always make sure you say to somebody from Life magazine that it is the words that supplemented the picture, not the other way around. In most magazines, that was the picture that was a supplement to the words, but in Life, it was the picture that came first.
Yes, I loved Life magazine too. I think um, one, of course, I don't know if this everybody's favorite picture, but it's my favorite Life magazine cover. It's the one about the moon, from Apollo 8
Yes,
when they took that shot from the moon of the planet Earth. I That to me was one of the greatest. And an earlier generation, you had the Marine kissing the nurse.
yes,
That apparently was very big too, and lots of others. I remember one um, that you had this picture of the first family, Kennedy and Mrs. Kennedy, President Kennedy and Mrs. Kennedy in the White House. So it seemed like a lot of people that I knew, Bill, a lot of my friends and my parents included, would have Life magazine on their living room table.
yes. Well,
I,
it was a family magazine. You didn't have to hide it.
yes, but it just seemed like many, many times you go to the dentist, you go to the doctor, you go to a friend's house, and there was a Life magazine there that you could pick up and look at the picture. So it's those things you grow up with, you take them for granted, and then when they disappear, you go, "Gee, I missed that." Same with Sports Illustrated. I'm going to miss it a lot because they
Yes.
had some great pictures.
Well, the I guess the era of the still photograph is kind of behind us. Although I love still photographs, of course nowadays it is so easy to take a still photograph and to print it as a color print. I mean, I was very much interested in photography when I was much younger, and I had some very fine equipment in the film era. You took the picture. I always took slides, and to have it made into a color print was a production. And if you wanted to do it in a home darkroom, it was really a production. Now you just take the picture on your telephone and you press a button connect it to a printer, and you have a beautiful 8 by 10 photograph.
And really clear and
Oh
absolutely
yes,
beautiful. That this is one of the jokes that I have with my sons, because my family, when we were kids, we have a limited number of pictures.
yes.
I don't know, I can't think of a number, but there aren't that many compared. I mean, I think I have more photos of my latest grandson than I have of me as a kid.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. Well, one reason is economic.
Right.
You take a still picture today, it's free because there's no film involved. I mean, if you go on a trip, for example, go on a vacation and take 500 pictures, you don't spend a dime. It's all on that electronic uh, receiver or whatever they call it in the camera. Whereas if you take that number of pictures on slide film, it's an enormous, hundreds of dollars. And so economically, the era of film is over. There is still a niche for it for certain purposes, and I know they use it in photography schools. But you can't beat the price. You
No.
really can't.
Well,
And also, you see the picture immediately.
that's what I was going to say. I mean, I can remember, well, with our latest grandson. I mean, you just like you get a picture in 2 minutes.
That's
So
right.
like we literally see a picture of him like every day.
Yes.
I mean, every morning, or every evening, a new picture comes in, and it's something that, again, when I was a little boy. In fact, there's a joke that I have with my Cuban friends of my generation, because it seemed like every Cuban baby had the same picture in the same place. It
Yes.
was, you're sitting down in this like little sofa, and I look at my picture and I look at a friend's picture, and it's like I wouldn't be surprised if the same photographer in the same studio took it. uh,
Yes.
and I assume that's the way it was up here too. And
Well,
all of
there
a
were
sudden, now
standard
with my,
poses.
yeah, but now with that's right. Now with my grandchildren, I see pictures of them playing outside, eating, sleeping. I mean, it's a variety of poses, like you say, that just makes it interesting. But I'm gonna miss Sports Illustrated. I mean,
Oh yes.
it was worth going to the store, and when they had these racks of magazines, that's the one that I always looked for, Bill.
Well, absolutely. Look, and the news magazines like Newsweek and Time were very important in an earlier generation. We held national conversations through news magazines. The purpose of the news magazine was to give a longer perspective to the news than the daily paper could do. Articles were longer. They were well researched, and I enjoyed them. I didn't always agree with them, but I enjoyed them. I think it's a loss to us. But today we have so many different outlets for that type of material that it is just economically impossible to run those magazines the
Right.
way they used to be run.
Exactly, and get all the advertising and everything else that goes with it. So, I guess rest in peace, Sports Illustrated. That's all we
Yeah.
can say. It was fun while it lasted. Now, you were mentioning to me right before we went on the air that New York City crime rates were came out, and it was a good news. So, fill us in.
Well, I was very surprised. I picked up the paper this morning to find that crime in the last year has gone down dramatically. I'm talking about violent crime. And the article pointed out that Mayor Adams, who gets a lot of grief and a lot of criticism, was probably the one responsible for it because he would not defund the police. He would not break up effective units to satisfy political groups. He put the cops where they were needed, and as an African American, no one could accuse him of racism. And isn't it interesting? Crime went down. Now,
Right.
this completely destroys the argument of the defund the police crowd. However, there is a very dark side to this story, and that is that the city council, which is to the left of Joe Stalin, I mean, this is we have a very, very left wing city council, has just passed a bill which we hope it will not go through its final passage, which would hamstring the police. It would require detailed reports, written reports on every contact the police have with every citizen. It would make it virtually impossible for them to do their jobs.
Right.
Now, the vote in the council is very close. The mayor is trying to convince enough people to vote against it so this will not become law. Because if it becomes law, it will paralyze the police, which is exactly what these people want to do.
Well,
They
the
are,
police they won't do their jobs. They'll
they
just
won't, of course, they won't be able to do their
Yeah,
job.
that's right. So a lot of crime will happen, and the police will sit there and say, "Well, I didn't have time to write the report, so go ahead and steal that because I'm not
Yes.
going to have time to." But this is really crazy. What's happening in so many cities, and I saw a statistic today, and I don't have the link, so I'm just telling you what I heard, that there was a CNN poll showing that Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden with black men, only
Yes.
black men. And I wonder to what extent many black men are sending the message of, hey, you're killing us in these cities with your
That's right.
policies. So again, I don't have all the information, but it makes sense when you see some of these cities and what they are doing to really stab the police. I don't have any other way of saying it.
Well, these are cities whose city councils are pro-criminal, and they're pro-criminal. They would not put it that way. They would say the criminals are the victims of society. They're not really criminals, and we don't believe. And when you look at the numbers, and they are mostly minorities, we believe it is racism. Adams would not go along with that garbage, and he made the point: we put the police where the crime is,
That's
and
right.
it's having its effect, and it is protecting black people. And I think you're right about black men, young black men in particular, are fed up with being victims. They're fed up with seeing their families as victims, and then being told you got to vote for these guys because they're your brothers and sisters. No, they're not.
That's right.
They're not.
That's
So,
right.
but now, however, I think we should also point out in recent days, you are beginning to see the shape of the Democratic Party campaign for this year. It's about three issues: abortion, abortion, and abortion.
Right.
Excuse me.
That's
I mean,
right. That's
and
right.
every
And
second
you
word out of their
forgot
mouth.
you forgot one.
What?
Trump is going to be a dictator.
Oh, yes, Trump is going to be a dictator.
Right.
He's a fascist. He's
Right.
like the Nazis. And they basically, you're going to see a rerun of the last campaign.
Right.
Abortion is turning out to be, I'm going to say, sorry, there must be something in the air here.
Yeah.
Um, there must be there must be some poll that shows them how effective the abortion issue is, and we know that in individual races it has been very effective. It brings out the young women's vote,
Right.
and
And
they have been told that they're going to lose all their rights. They'll be sent to another planet.
right.
Terrible.
Right. Well,
Oh, is that
the,
terrible or what?
yeah. No, I know. I know. And um, yes, I think there must be something in the air there.
I'm going to turn up. I'm going to turn up the air cleaner.
Yeah. No, but I think there was a hit song one time so called "Something in the Air,"
Something,
and I met. Yeah.
something in the well,
Right,
yeah.
whatever, yeah. But it has been successful in certain places, but I don't know how many more of those places are left because uh, like in well, I should back up for a second and say a lot depends on, of course, what the Trump presidential campaign, assuming
Yes.
he's the candidate, and he probably is going to be, um, and he's taken, I think, a very practical position on abortion. He's saying there has to be a number of weeks. And if he can communicate that, then I think that will lessen the Democrat message, because what the Democrats are running against is a ban, 100% ban on abortion. That's what they're saying, that they want to ban abortion 100%. Actually, nobody does that.
Yes.
And so it is a communication, a way
Well,
of presentation.
the Republicans have got to talk to their base and say that if you take an extreme position, you're going to defeat the party, and where will you be then?
Exactly. And
And
no, you're right. You're exactly right. But I think the key is to somehow say, and I think Trump would say that yeah, that we believe there ought to be a window for rape, incest, of course,
yes,
and for
life of the mother.
life of the mother, and then even 10, 12 weeks, and because what the Democrats are running against is saying that they're trying to ban abortion, but I don't know of any state that actually bans abortion. Here in Texas, we have something called the heartbeat law,
Yeah.
which actually means that if there's a heartbeat, there can be no abortion, but that's still 6 to 10 weeks before there is a heartbeat. And anyway, so, but you're right. You're exactly right. That's what they're going to be running against. And the Republicans better get ready to fight that. And so far, from what I've seen, Trump is pretty practical on that topic.
Yes.
He's
Yes.
simply, but let's talk about 2024, Bill, because I've never seen anything like this before, where you have two men running. Most Americans would rather not have the two of them running, but it looks like they are going to be running. And I've never seen anything like that before. Also, DeSantis coming out. I think you wrote about this today, saying how you had expectations for him. I did too when
Yes.
he first started out. But Bill, I was looking at a graph, and tell me what you think about this. I was looking at a graph on one of the internet sites or something that showed President Trump's or former President Trump's support going like crazy up after they broke into his house with the FBI, not broke in, but when they went into his house with the FBI, and then came all these investigations that a lot of people were saying, this is crazy, you're going too far. And that is a big reason why his base is more consolidated now than ever before, Bill. That's what I think, that he's benefiting from his enemies, if I could put it that way, Bill.
Well, yes. I think that the commentators go on the air at CNN and say they cannot understand why every time Trump is facing another charge, his popularity goes up. Well, the answer, which is an obvious answer, is that the people don't buy this investigation. I mean, they see one investigation after another coming to a conclusion right before the presidential election. And we're supposed to believe this is all a coincidence. Now we have in Georgia this scandal involving the district attorney, which may kill the whole case against Trump down there. We have him being charged in New York. Everyone finds this in New York to be the funniest, that he's being charged with overvaluing his properties when trying to get a loan. And everybody, I happen to one of my best friends happens to be a retired banker who specialized in real estate, and he said, I don't know anybody who doesn't overvalue the properties. It's a ritual. You give us your one number, then the bank has its own investigators, and they come up with another number. They talk about it, and they get it done. But nobody ever got prosecuted for overvaluing his property, because there were no victims. All the deals were made. The banks got their money. Trump got his loan, and everybody was happy. So how can you prosecute a victimless crime? It's look. We don't know where these investigations are going, but I am concerned that there will be enough savvy on the part of the some of these prosecutors to make sure that the trial is held and reaches its conclusion before the election, so there can be a big newspaper headline saying guilty, and that's what they're aiming for. They want to destroy him and destroy his candidacy. Now, the Supreme Court is going to consider the Colorado case where they took him off the ballot, and I'm convinced, and I think most observers. I am not a lawyer, but most lawyers I've heard on the news have said they're sure that the Supreme Court will put him back on the ballot. The court does not want to get involved in presidential elections. A presidential election is a constitutionally mandated event. It's very important to the country's history. We have never had an attempt like this to take people off ballots. I mean, the general feeling is this is the one place where the people decide. And I think I am hoping that Trump comes through it all okay. But knowing the justice system and the way it can be manipulated, and the fact that all the cases have been brought in democratic cities where you're going to have liberal juries, liberal prosecutors, something could go wrong. I mean,
It probably
I,
will.
I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that he'll be convicted of something. He might be convicted of fraud in New York.
Yes.
I mean, for in that ridiculous case, and I completely agree with you. No, nobody's claiming that they were defrauded. So
No.
how can you have a fraud case? And then the other case of the other woman,
Yes.
who's accusing him, if I understand it correctly, Bill, she's saying that 30 years ago, she went, I guess, into the fitting room in a ladies' store, ladies' department store or
Bergdorf
section.
Goodman.
Right.
Bergdorf Goodman. Yeah.
And that while she was, I guess, in the fitting room, Trump raped her and was screaming MAGA, go MAGA, or something like that, which is even more absurd.
I have never seen a case in New York store where a man got into the women's dressing room. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And if it were to happen, Bill,
That
the
would be
screaming,
news.
well, the screaming would,
Yes.
because I look, like most guys, we've gone to shopping.
Yes.
And we sit in that little sofa, right?
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Right there, and the women are going in to try out things, and they're usually pretty busy. Most of those rooms are pretty busy, and I can just imagine if a guy went in there and raped somebody, that somebody would have heard it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the way those dressing room sections are designed, there are plenty of people around seeing who's going in and who's going out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can just imagine the clerk, the clerk there in the cashier. Trump walks into one of these fitting rooms after a woman, and she doesn't know.
Yes, that's what they're saying. Bergdorf Goodman is right across the street from Trump's headquarters in New York, and his face is very well known. I mean, he wouldn't pull something like that, I mean, in a dressing room.
I know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That the case is so crazy that, and then the case was like what 30 years ago.
Yeah,
So now they bring it back as they changed the law so that she could bring it back.
yes.
And some rich Democrats are paying for her legal expenses because, as I understand, prior to this, no lawyer in New York would touch the case because they thought she was crazy.
Yeah, well, she probably is. What they're hoping for in these cases on the Trump side is a hung jury. And even if there are convictions, you can appeal a conviction. The appeal can go on for years. But the problem is, what they are legitimately concerned about is if he is found guilty, even in a ridiculous case, that fact alone will cost him a certain number of votes.
Right.
On the other hand, it might get him some votes. So we don't know. It is a strange election. The Democrat, we should not be overconfident about Republicans. Republicans work hard to lose elections. We've seen that in the past. They really are experts at it. And it's a divided party. And the Democrats are obviously getting started again. They will have Biden at the head of the ticket if they can get him into the room. And it's perfectly obvious that Kamala Harris is being instructed. She has been much more effective in her appearances on television recently than she was earlier. She's taking lessons.
Right.
I mean,
it appears that she's going to be carrying the flag for reproductive rights.
Oh, that's her whole thing.
Yeah, that's what instead of the border, she's not going to worry about the border. She's going to worry about reproductive rights. But I think, Bill, you're exactly right. You don't want to get too overconfident. And I always, to me, elections are like a baseball game. You can have the best pitcher on the mound, but still lose the game. So you got to get 27 outs. And I think here you have to win the election with good campaigning, which is why, Bill, I think it's very, very important that we put somebody with Trump on the ticket that conveys a sense of seriousness.
Yes.
And this reminds me a little bit of 1980 in this respect. In 1980, when Reagan put Bush on the ticket, not only was he uniting the party, but he was also putting somebody who was pretty serious, somebody
Yes,
that you could look at and say, okay, in case of an emergency, and we almost had one the following
sure did.
spring. In case of an emergency, he can take over. And I really believe that Trump needs to use that same philosophy, and that's why I'm a little bit concerned about putting somebody like the Congresswoman from New York, Stefanik, or whatever her name
Elise
is.
Stefan,
Yeah, she may be
Stefanik.
a right. She may be a very sharp lady. She's probably very talented, but she doesn't have a lot of experience. I would rather go to somebody like Mike Pompeo, somebody at that level. I would even consider DeSantis a
Yeah.
stronger VP. And
I
you know,
don't, I don't, I don't think he would take it.
well, maybe not, but you know, they kiss and make up a lot at these
Yeah.
conventions. So, but anyway, but I'm guessing my larger point is that it has to be somebody very, very serious, that the American people can say, okay, that fellow or that lady is qualified, and this is why, you know, everybody keeps talking about putting the governor of Arkansas, Sanders Huckabee, or the one from South Dakota, and they're very nice people and they're strong conservatives, but they don't have a lot of experience, Bill. And I would rather see somebody like Pompeo or Lee Zeldin,
Yeah.
somebody like that, who, you know, who adds value to the ticket. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, I happen to agree with you because Trump is also getting along in years. He is all, of course, he's already been president, so we know that he can do the job. And but I think also somebody who will inspire confidence. It's too bad we don't have a top military officer who's well known, but
Right.
we don't. Uh, there are members of the Senate, members of the House, some governors. I would not underestimate the governor of South Dakota,
Hmm.
Governor Nome.
Right.
She is a real smart cookie, and she's also beautiful.
Right. That
That
would
that
help.
that would help.
Yeah.
That would help. I I, I would. I'm very sorry that he and Nikki Haley have come to blows because I think she would have been a great addition to the ticket. People
Yeah.
like her.
Yeah.
People
People
like
like
her.
her. I heard something yesterday about Governor Abbott of Texas potentially being a VP. Nobody's talking too much about that, but he is a very capable guy.
Yes,
The governor of Virginia, Youngkin.
Youngkin also very good man.
Yeah.
Very good man. I would take him. Um, I I'm trying to think. I went through this actually last night. There are not too many great names out there. In 1952, the Republican Party, which was really a strikeout party. I mean, they had not been in the White House in 20 years, and they really didn't have anybody. They had Robert Taft, a very fine man, but an isolationist, from the old days. But they were able to get Eisenhower to run. Eisenhower, there was no better name in America than Eisenhower, and they got him to run. They weren't even sure he was a Republican, but his name was on the ticket, and that was it. They Nobody could beat him. He was the General Ike, but we don't have a General Ike today. And I don't know. I mean, there's talk of a television commentator. Bad move. Bad
Yeah.
move.
That
Uh,
wouldn't do it. That wouldn't
the,
do it for me.
no, that would
Tucker
probably
Carlson.
bad move.
No, that would be a bad
He
move. Yeah.
can't control himself, and but they're maybe it's somebody who is not well known, but who he will make well known very quickly for some remarkable thing the person has done.
Right.
But I can't come up with the name.
Well, there's talk of Senator Vance, J.D. Vance, because he's
Is
very
Ohio?
charismatic, and even though he's only a first year or first term senator, he had a lot of business experience before. But somebody was saying to me that Trump is really hung up on, and again, this is hearsay. Trump didn't say this to me, but I've heard somebody say that Trump is really hung up on making sure that the names sound good.
Yes.
So, for example, Trump Vance, that would sound pretty good.
Yeah.
Trump Abbott, that would sound good. It's almost like he wants the second person to be a one syllable, so that it's Trump Vance, Trump Abbott,
Yeah.
and I mean maybe that's a silly thing, but he is conscious of those. of those little details. But the one thing about Trump is that he's got plenty of time to make the decision here,
Yes,
and I hope he doesn't rush it because it's no advantage to him to tell us this next week. Well, I mean, what's the point of that?
that's right.
Tim, but
I
Tim
hope he does.
Scott, by the way, I forgot about him. Tim Scott.
Yes. Who just got engaged over the weekend.
Yes, who just got engaged. So that would be a wonderful. They can go on a honeymoon when they're campaigning, I guess.
It may be somebody out of the blue. It may be somebody out of the blue, a prominent business person who would be dazzling, but I don't know if there is one out there who's too dazzling right now. So
No, I mean that's the problem. I think you said it correctly. There is no military man out there like an Ike or even Colin Powell in his prime.
yes,
I know that he went downhill, but I'm just saying in his prime was seen that way as a great as some remember Bob Dole considered him for VP.
yes,
And I believe that the first Bush also considered him as the VP as well, because he was very well respected. But there is no such thing right now. But I do think we'll be talking a lot. This is going to create a lot of interesting conversation. But before we run out of time, I wanted to say a couple of things. You realize that Mr. Biden, Mr. President Biden, could actually come in second in New Hampshire.
oh yes,
Even
yes,
though he's not running. I guess there is another Democrat running, I believe. And then there's a write-in vote for Biden, and that could actually come in second. Wouldn't that be
yes.
something?
Well, yeah, these primaries, they have to fill airtime discussing them in the 24-hour news cycle. But how many times in the next week do you think you're going to hear the name Iowa mentioned? I mean, they're forgotten, and for 1 week every 4 years, it's like Brigadoon. For 1 week every 4 years, these places come alive, and a group of local newsmen are on television because they're the only people who know anything about that state, and
Right.
sometimes they're the only people who've ever been there. And why the West Virginia primary is tomorrow, Joe, and here is the leading expert on West Virginia, who has been in journalism for 85 years, and everything is West Virginia. We'll be right here counting the ballots as they come in.
Right.
And then after that, you never hear of West Virginia again.
Well, it's like every time they have the Iowa primary, they have those people from the Des Moines Register who are, giving their opinions.
Yes.
I think they have a very famous poll there that
Yes, they do. The Iowa poll.
The Iowa poll.
I was just thinking in terms of names. One political name that will come up will be Joe Manchin, who is an independent.
That could be a factor if they can get in all 50 states,
Yes. Well,
and the same with Bobby Kennedy. If they can Bobby Kennedy's actually polling again, but not in.
Well, he's a Democrat.
Yeah,
I think he's left the party.
No, I know that. I realize that, but I'm just saying that as a third party, apparently they're putting him in all, or trying to put him in all 50 states. And if he can get 10% of the vote, that's a big factor. Yeah. I don't know, because whether it's Manchin or Kennedy, they're not in every state. But I do have to tell you, Bill, a very important closing suggestion here, and that is, I hope you're not planning to use an electric car to go anywhere these days, because they seem to be having a lot of difficulty in the winter. And what an incredible surprise that must be. You spend $60,000 in an automobile, and then in the middle of winter, it's impossible to charge it up. I mean,
well, I would like to know.
That's horrible.
I think this is a serious question. I would like to know why we weren't told this earlier. I mean, the people who build these cars and batteries certainly knew that they are very, very ineffective in cold weather. To me, that's a scandal. I mean, to me, they are defrauding the public.
Yes, I think so, and I wouldn't be surprised if some lawyer shows up with a lawsuit, because I had never heard that before.
No,
and now down here we don't have those extreme cold temperatures, but I saw, like in Chicago, they were all lined up. They couldn't move.
Well, that absolutely, and people have emergencies. That's, I think, the thing that's really bothering people about electric cars, and that is you cannot trust them in an emergency. I think, what was it that in the kind of weather they had in Iowa, the battery lasted 29 minutes. I mean, what if you have to get someone to the hospital?
Well, another big story about electric cars too is what just happened with Hertz rental cars.
Yes.
They apparently got rid of all their electric cars, and they had somebody from the company on the radio today here locally, and she was saying that there's nothing wrong with the car. The cars are beautiful, they run beautiful, but it's just that people don't want them.
Yes.
Because if you're on a business trip and you rent a car, with gasoline you can fill up anywhere.
Of course.
But with electric cars, they got to give you a map of where you charge it up, Bill.
That's right. And then you've got to sit there for 20 minutes. And that is something people don't want to do. That comes out of their travel time. And also, usually, I doubt if these charging stations are going to be on Fifth Avenue property. They're probably going to be in, where you have service stations, and people will
Right.
be afraid, especially women, to sit there for 20 minutes
Right.
in a vulnerable car.
Yeah,
I
but
think it's going to be one of the great flops of the age.
right, but the person they were interviewing was simply saying that too many customers were complaining about how impractical it was to charge it up before you bring it back.
That's right.
And they simply said, the cars were not moving because nobody wanted to rent one. And now I guess they've put them all for sale. But I known people who have quite a few friends who have electric cars, and they run very well. Actually, people
Yes.
that I've known down here, these cars run very well. So they like them. And I had a friend who had the Nissan electric car, and he thought it was very nice and practical. But it's certain situations when they're not reliable, whether it's
That's right.
extreme temperatures or, like you say, especially down here in Texas, where to go from Dallas to Austin, it's 200 miles.
Yes.
Well, you have to charge it. And where are you going to charge it?
That's right.
Whereas you can stop at a gas station and in 10 minutes, you're back on the road, Bill.
Right. And you can even carry an extra gallon of gas with you for emergencies. You can't carry a charger with you.
No.
And I would like to know where all the electricity is coming from to charge these cars. Now, I'll bet they're coming from new electric plants that are based on carbon fuels.
Well, that's the big secret. Nobody has confronted anybody on that. But I mean, look, if they want to buy electric cars, that's fine. But I think you're right about the scandal of the batteries. There's a lot of people who must be wondering, how did I end up with one of these things that doesn't charge in the winter or doesn't run in the winter, especially in a country where half of the country lives in winter weather?
That's right.
I mean,
That's
it's not
right.
like we were living everybody in Texas weather. I mean, people are all over. Well, Bill, as always, thank you so much for your time, and we'll continue reading Urgent Agenda and keeping up with all the latest stories that you write about. And I look forward to our next chat. Time flies when we get together, Bill.
Yeah, it sure does. I look forward to it too. And let's see who the presidential candidates are next week.
That's right. Let's see who they are. We may have a surprise next week.
That's right.
But next week I've got a couple. I was looking at On This Day in History, and next Monday there's a couple of Brooklyn Dodger anniversaries.
Yeah, well,
that I'm going to bring up, but I think that'll refresh your memory a little bit, Bill.
Terrific. Great.
All right. Have a great week, Bill.
Same to you, Silvio. Talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week. Our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, always looking back at the week and looking ahead at the next week with our friend Bill. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.